To grow, you must suffer, and suffering leads to greatness.
We need adversity, we need difficulty, we need struggle, you need a weight to carry. And if you don't have any of this, you do not get your character tested. You do not advance in your own perception of who you are in this world and how you engage with all the other people around you.
Life was basically the perfect grounds for training for where you need to go in your life. All the beatings, all the bullying, all the you going through learning disabilities, all the struggles. It was the absolute perfect training ground for you to go to where you need to go. And that's how I started looking at my life versus woe is me, poopy pants, kick a rock down the street mentality. It was, God just hooked you right the fuck up.
Perception is what makes the difference and is what allows us to transform our suffering into something that is necessary, fundamental, beneficial, and conducive to greatness and growth. Perception is simply the level of your awareness and how expanded your awareness is. So by expanding your awareness, you can expand and enhance your perception, and then you will start to see everything differently. The Stoics talk about the importance of perception and the power that it has in determining how we act within the world. It is not things that upset us, but our judgments about things, says Epictetus. The event itself is objective, and it simply is what it is. Your perception is what gives it meaning, a deeper meaning conjured by the story we tell ourselves about what happened, why it happened, and what this happening means. So this is why our values and our perspective is very important, because we give life to both good and bad through our perceptions and value systems, perhaps inherited through familial tradition, through religious doctrine, or through philosophical inquiry. And this is why it is important to align our values and perception as closely as we can with nature, and religion and philosophy can aid us in this process. Now, the reason why perception is so closely linked with suffering is because we create the suffering by perceiving it as so. There is a great quote from Buddha, which is, "Pain in life is inevitable, but suffering is not. Pain is what the world does to you, suffering is what you do to yourself, by the way you think about the pain you receive. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional." So Buddhism states that life is suffering and that attachment to desire causes suffering. Hinduism accepts suffering as a necessary part of life, and it can be caused by attachment to material things. Islam receives suffering as a form of challenge and testing and necessary preparation to become better, stronger, and prepared for paradise. And Christianity sees suffering as fundamental, something to be learned from, and a price worth paying for being and existing and striving for the good and the divine. Now, this to me shows a common ground amongst which all religions originate, and these are different pathways to the same thing. There is an important message which is being conveyed, and this is the idea and the fundamental basis of which Perennial philosophy was founded. If you have not heard of Perennial philosophy, let me quickly sum it up to you. It is a whole topic in and of itself, and an entire video could be made on it, but I will put it in simpler terms. So Aldous Huxley, author of Brave New World, gave the definition perennial philosophy to the idea and perspective that views religious and spiritual traditions as sharing a single metaphysical truth or origin from which all esoteric and exoteric knowledge and doctrine has grown. So in the perennial philosophy, there are ideas of metaphysical truths, which are meta-truths. And these are ideas proposed and accepted within many spiritual and religious traditions. Some of these metaphysical truths are that everything is connected, life continues in some form after death, and that there is a greater purpose than our own individual and materialistic needs. One of these metaphysical truths is very pertinent to our video, and that is that life is suffering, or at least suffering is a necessary part of life.
I've been talking a lot to the crowds that I've been talking to, not about rights, but about responsibility, right? Because you can't have the bloody what are you doing? You can't have the conversation about rights without the conversation about responsibility, because your rights are my responsibility. That's what they are, technically. So you just can't have only half of that discussion. And we're only having half that discussion. And the question is, well, what the hell are you leaving out if you only have that half of the discussion? And the answer is, well, you're leaving out responsibility. And then the question is, well, what are you leaving out if you're leaving out responsibility? And the answer might be, well, maybe you're leaving out the meaning of life. That's what it looks like to me. It's like, here you are, suffering away. What makes it worthwhile? Rights? You know, you're completely out. You have no idea what it's almost impossible to describe how bad an idea that is. Responsibility. That's what gives life meaning. It's like lift a load.
This is why when you are suffering, you must quash the idea that you are being picked on, or that God is singling you out, or that everything is against you and everyone is against you, or that the cards you were dealt weren't good enough, and all of the other excuses and attempts to blame something outside of oneself. You must realize that you are complicit in creating your own distress. Your perception has been corrupted, and it remains still, completely within your control, to expand and realign your perception with nature as it should be. What we must aim to do is bear our suffering with strength and honor and courage, and face it voluntarily as a necessary part of life, or a challenge to be overcome, or a lesson to be learned from, or a trial to become well acquainted with. A skill it is to bear your suffering. You can use philosophy and religion and spirituality to aid you in your journey, and wisdom is always easily accessible for everyone, especially with modern advancements in technology and the creation of the internet. Suffering is what life does to us, and nobody is special, nobody can escape suffering. But it isn't about what life does to us, it is about how we respond. This is where we should be focused, always. This is where you can truly make a difference. We ultimately need to realize the power that we have in our own lives as individuals, and we ultimately have the power to make things both better and worse. And our perception, our values, our actions, our conditioning, our genetics, and many other factors come into play when determining our response. But always remember, especially when you are suffering, that you can make it a lot worse or a lot better purely by reacting in certain ways. You must be strong and perspicacious with how you respond, and do not damage or sabotage yourself and further your own demise. Do not let your suffering break you. Let your suffering teach you. Let your suffering motivate you. Let your suffering make you better, stronger, and wiser. I just want to say that if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe to help grow this movement, this message, and this channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.